Brad Johnson here from johnson.audio, and today I'm going to continue in my Pro Tools versus Logic series, and we're going to explore Pro Tools automation against Logic Pro 10's automation. This should help you decide what might be the best DAW for your Mac. Obviously, this is for Mac users only because Logic is a Mac-only software. I am going to move forward now. All right, so I'm in Pro Tools here, and as you can see, if I want to open up automation, I could either hit Option minus and it'll open up all automation lanes for the track, or I can just go over to the individual track and select on waveform, and it'll give me the different automation parameters that I can mess with. Down here, you'll see the different automation styles. I have read, touch, latch, and write. All right, I'm going to go over to Logic now and show you how Logic automation works. I can open up the automation lanes by either going up and clicking on this button right up here, or I can hit A and it'll open up all the automation lanes. But unlike Pro Tools, you cannot just open up an automation lane on a single track. You have to open up automation on all tracks. It's not that big of a deal to me, but maybe it might be a deal breaker for you. And you can see right here, it's very similar though. I can select again my different parameters. I can go over here to main, and I can select solo, mute. I can select my pans, my volume, and then over here I have again those same different automation styles, but I do have two extra here in Logic that I don't have in Pro Tools. These are available in Pro Tools HD, but I'm assuming if you're deciding between Logic and Pro Tools, you are not going for the HD version of Pro Tools. So I do have this trim and relative here. I will explain what all these mean right now. So read is just your default automation style. You are able to just write in your automation. So if I wanted to just go here, I could click and just start writing in my automation. I wouldn't be able to actually write it in real time. This is just if I want to edit my automation with my mouse. If I were to play it and move my fader, I get no automation writes. Now if I go to, I'm going to go ahead and clear this and go up to Mix, delete automation, delete all track automation. And if I go to touch, now I'm able to actually write in my automation with using the fader or a control surface if you have one linked to your DAW. And what's cool with touch is that it'll actually fall back down to the bass level. So right now I'm at 0 dB. So if I hit play, I can write it. It drops back down. Cool. Undo that. And if I go to latch, it's going to be the same thing. I'm going to be using my fader, but this time it won't drop back down to the relative value. It's going to actually just stay where I leave it. Now you might be asking, why would I want one or the other? Well, latch is really good for plugins and other kinds of parameters that you want to change during the song, but you don't want to have fall back down to its relative value. Obviously, if it's like a compressor and you're trying to change the settings on that, you want to keep that constant. So that's why you'd want to use latch. You'd want to use touch for stuff like volume automation when you want to just kind of boost something but then bring it back down to the level that it was at. Now, write is going to be, as you can see, warning. It erases things. Write is basically you can write in your automation, but as you hit play again, it's going to continue to write. So if I hit play, I'm writing automation. And then, bam, I write it. I stop. If I go back and hit play again, oh, it naturally wants to switch it on me because it knows. It'll erase the automation. So in both DAWs, Pro Tools and Logic, it will switch itself to a different automation style after you do write, because it knows that if you accidentally leave the track and write and you're just going around and playing other spots, that you're erasing all your automation. I just say ignore this one. You do not need it. Don't use it. And then trim. So what's going to be special about Logic right now over Pro Tools is that you do have this trim and relatives. So say that I go through here and I write in touch automation. I'm like, okay, cool, but I don't like, I'm going through and I realize that I don't like the levels that I'm getting. I can go down to relative. I'll do relative first because I think it's pretty cool. And I go down to relative automation, and now I have this little change in here, and it gives me this. So I can go through and dip the level down on this automation and bring it down all together like this. Now I have two automations going, and now I'm dipping all this down to bring it to the level that I find more desirable. You wouldn't be able to do that in Pro Tools because if I get rid of relative, you'll watch the fader is going to move around. And so I can't obviously move it. And so that's pretty cool. In trim, I'm going to be able to say I don't like the fact that I did this dip here. So I'm going to change that. I'm going to go ahead and hit my fader, write a new automation, and that changes it. So that's the difference between trim and relative. Trim will change the automation that I already wrote in. I can make adjustments to it, and the relative will be the way that I can just affect everything on a different lane globally. Super cool. Cannot do that in Pro Tools. All right, I'm going to go back over here to Pro Tools. One of the things that I love about Pro Tools is that I do have up here all these different tools that I can use for automation. I don't have a lot of options in Logic. I have Automation Select Tool, Automation Curve Tool. Automation Curve Tool will take stuff like this and curve my automation. And the Select Tool basically just selects part of my automation that I want to select instead of creating a new automation node. Nodes are those little dots. I go back over to Pro Tools. I can use this to draw in my automation. I can create just a line. I can do square if I want. And the square is going to go off of the grid. So if my grid is set to 30-second notes, I'm going to be doing 30-second squares. If I'm set to quarter notes, I will do quarter note squares. Cool. Same goes with the triangles. I can create triangles, squigglies, and then random. The parabolic and S-curve is for tempo changes. So if you choose one of those, it won't work down here, but it will work up here. Cool. We're going to go ahead and go back to my Smart tool, click on this lane. I'm going to select all. I'm going to right-click, cut all automation. That's how you delete all automation on a lane. In Logic, it's a little bit more quick, so you can go up to delete automation, delete all track automation. Cool. So that brings me to my next part with the mix window up here in Logic. You have all these different options for your automation. You can delete automation, invisible automation, all track, blah, blah, blah. You can do create automation, which basically just creates points at the beginning of a region, and you can create points on all volume, pans, and sends. I never use this, but you can use it if you want to. And then you have convert automation between track and region automation. What does that mean? So in Logic, you actually have two kind of different layers. You have your track layer, which is going to be the same thing that you have in Pro Tools, and then you have a region layer, which is a little bit different. You don't have this option in Pro Tools either. So with region, say I want to, say I have a part that I want to copy and paste, and I want to keep, like, say I want to ride the volume on this part of the kick drum. I'm going to go ahead and select my marquee tool. If I were to then create a dip here on the region, it wouldn't be the same thing on the track. Then on the track, I could actually create, at this point in the song, I could do a lift. But say I have the same drum part later that I don't want to do this to, but I want to keep that little dip in it, I can go back to region, go back here, copy and paste, move this over, don't copy. Now, if I do this, I go to my region, and that copy and pasted, but I go back to my track, and that didn't. So that is the difference between a track and a region. You can kind of do some cool edits with that. You cannot do that in Pro Tools. Now, one thing in Pro Tools that's super cool that you can do that you can't do in Logic is if I'm freehand drawing this and I get all these different automation points, I can then go ahead and select this, go up to Edit, Thin Automation, and it actually gets rid of some of the points just to make it a little bit more clean. So that's a cool feature that you cannot do in Logic. And so one thing here in Pro Tools that I really like is that you can go up here to automation in the window. You can suspend all automation. You cannot do that in Logic. There's one other thing I like to discuss in this Pro Tools versus Logic automation debate, and that is how to automate plugins. I'm going to go over to Logic here. I'm going to click on this kick track. I have a EQ inserted. If I go up here to the parameters list, you will see that I have all of my different parameters in the EQ already listed in here. Now, if I go over to Pro Tools and insert in the same EQ, I'll go over here to the parameters list, and you will see that I do not have it in here. How do I get it? That is a good question. Even in here, it's not there. So what you have to do is you have to go up here into the plugin window, hit this little button up here, and it'll open up a plugin automation window, and say I want to do a frequency sweep. I would click on this and add it and hit OK. Now when I go into here, I will have that parameter to be able to automate. Now this might seem kind of annoying, but trust me, there's actually something that's pretty cool about this that you might not really see on the surface. But when I come over here to Logic and look at all the different parameters that I could be automating, it can be a little confusing and daunting because you might not be sure if you're actually automating the right thing. If you have a bunch of different, like on FabFilter, I have all these different EQ points because FabFilter is amazing like that. I might not necessarily know which one I'm automating. In Pro Tools, let's say I click on this, I hold Control Option Command. Now I go to Open Plugin Automation Dialog. It will actually highlight what it is that I'm looking at. So that's very, very helpful. And then plus you won't have your automation window here super blocked up with a bunch of different parameters you're not using. All right, so that pretty much runs the gambit of the automation and what you can do in both Pro Tools and Logic. Logic succeeds in the fact that it has that trim and relative tool that Pro Tools doesn't have. And I also like the fact that Logic has a more of a global just delete all automation instead of having to select it on Pro Tools. But those are very minor things. Really, when it comes to both of them, I find it to be kind of a draw. They both have their strengths and their weaknesses. It wouldn't be my deciding factor for what's the best DAW. So in this Pro Tools versus Logic debate, I think it's a fair draw. I hope you got something out of this. If you did, please leave me a comment. If you have any questions, just let me know and reach out to me. I love to talk with you. If you got anything out of this video, please give me a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. I am here to help you sing your story, mix your mission, and master your message at johnson.audio. I will see you in the next video. Bye.